Hi, it's time for another episode of Security Decoded. This week you have me in the studio, and we have John and Dennis via Skype. They're via Skype this week because we're in the middle of the Snowmageddon on the East Coast, but actually ends up being not a Snowmageddon at all. And we have yet another, of course, Java update from Oracle, and we have Evernote doing a password reset for 50 million people. All that and more coming up on Security Decoded.
Welcome to this week's Security Decoded. I'm here with John and Mike. And I guess the first news that we have is the snow. How are you guys surviving the snow?
What snow?
Yeah, what snow?
I survived.
We were saying 20 inches last night before we went to bed, and I got up this morning and
Yeah.
had a little bit of snow, but through the day it's gotten less and less because it's just raining.
It melted as fast as it came for me. I got pretty lucky.
Yeah, me too.
Now, we have a colleague who sent us a pic today. And boy, he's got about 20 inches on his car. I hope he doesn't try to drive it anytime soon.
Yeah, he's lucky he gets to work from home. I just let that all melt by Saturday or Sunday, and then go out.
Yeah. And the snow is why you see us on Skype. We didn't know what kind of weather we were going to get, so John and I are on Skype, and Mike is in the studio.
When you
I
guys
guess
have
the,
to me, if I'm a little quiet, I'm trying to keep myself on mute because I'm also fighting off a cold. So to keep from bombarding you with the coughing, there'll be a little bit of a delay as I come in and out of mute.
Yeah, and that's what Skype's designed for, to keep your colds away.
John, you're
Take
still
this.
sick?
Take that.
Well, I guess one of the other besides the snow is the RSA. What have you guys heard from the RSA? A lot of the articles that we have this week are going to be vendor news coming from those, and in fact, it's a little light on the news headlines this week.
Yeah,
I've noticed also that everybody seems to be, compared to last year, fairly quiet.
yeah. I mean, I've heard some vendor announcements. That's about the most I've really heard. Haven't really talked to anybody that went to see if there's anything really good this year or not. But RSA is always generally pretty good.
Yeah, and we should see lots of news items, follow-up news items coming from that.
Yeah, lots of announcements, I'm sure.
Okay, well, if you are watching right now, you're watching us live, and you can watch us record Security Decoded every week live. And while you watch, you can join the chat room with other live viewers. And Mike, are you monitoring the chat room?
I am monitoring the chat room, yes.
And the chat room's in front of us, so while we record, we'll be able to interact with you. And our first article is, I know it's going to be hard for you guys to believe, but Oracle issues an emergency Java update.
I'm telling you, we need to have a segment every week. What's new in Java this week?
Yeah.
I don't know. It kind of falls along the lines of any publicity, I guess, is good publicity. After a while, you got to kind of get worried about the boy who cried wolf, right? People get so numb to it that, and I think that's the worst thing that can happen is people get so numb to this just constant issue with Java that they almost come to expect it. And I think that's probably the biggest danger you can make is to get numb to this when people should actually, stay very in tune with this.
Yeah, and not just numb, they become complacent. They basically say, whatever, just they don't stop using it. I don't think they realize that they need to, if there's issues like this, they probably shouldn't be using it until those issues are fixed. So.
Yep. In the article,
This was the third update.
Yeah, in the article that covers on security releases on the Java update, it just goes to speak to why Java is so important and why you can't just let it fade into the background. Java was built for its cross-platform functionality. It can infect several different platforms because that's what it was designed to do, was to be able to work across several different platforms easily.
I thought there was an interesting point to that article by Krebs. It said that Java somehow ended up on 80% of the consumer systems. I guess developers liked it and moved it over, and it was cross-platform, and I guess that's why it ended up to be so popular.
Well, yeah, it was a free open source technology, so the developer could develop with it, and as other operating systems start to include it, like Windows has started including it in Apple, and it's on Linux. It's everywhere. It's just the one thing you can count on being there across the operating system. You don't have to worry about installing, the libraries from Microsoft. You just know that it's there.
I know I can speak from experience that when I was going back and getting my IT degree, we were required to get a core language. And the core language, they call it object-oriented design, when actually it was Java. So, we have a lot of people, their education is based off of it. It is a, cross-platform product. It is lightweight. It is easy to use. If I understand right, Mike, it was based mostly for browsers and the web. That was its big intention, right?
No, not necessarily. Not Java. JavaScript is obviously web,
Okay,
but
yeah.
Java has server components too. It's been in web servers probably longer than it's been on a browser. I mean, it's always been available in a browser to a point, but its focus has been a lot of server. Like Apache has their own version that runs strictly. It's basically a Java server. Is what it ends up being. So it's used everywhere.
I also did there was a couple recommendations in that article by Krebs. Said to if you don't need it, don't obviously unplug it. But it also said to use a dual browser approach. So you could have a different browser with the Java, and then you could have a browser without the Java, and then the one without the Java would be where you would do most of your surfing and your work. And then if you really had a program that really needed Java, just go to that second browser that you don't use very often.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. Actually, I use Firefox as a general browser most of the time.
Yeah.
I'm on a Mac, and then I use Chrome for anything that has Flash or Java in it, because they're built into the Chrome browser and they're fairly sandboxed. But if I'm somewhere where I want to watch a video and I can't watch it in Firefox, I just bring up Chrome and do it.
And I got to say, because we do work together, I think we all do that. I tend to lean towards the browser that is customer facing to the environment we support. And then, like Mike, I have two other browsers, Firefox and Chrome, depending on what I'm using it for, what I'm looking for. But I try to keep the browser also on hand so I can either reproduce an error or reproduce an infection on a browser that's customer facing. But I tend to keep multiple browsers around also.
Am I the only one who uses IE?
I use IE.
If you twist my arm, I'll use IE. But by default, no. In fact, I spend most of my time on a Mac except for when I'm at work. So even there, I use a Mac to do reverse engineering. So
yep. My IE exposure is purely work. It is my primary browser at work because, like I said, it's what we have customer facing. So I tend to use the tools that are customer facing so I can quickly pick up on any impact.
Yeah, I still use IE as a sort of for most of my programs, but I'm really beginning to like the Chrome. It just seems a lot safer and a lot more robust.
Yeah, I tend to use Firefox more than Chrome just because of the debugging tools that I have installed. I know you can do some of that in Chrome natively, but
yeah.
When I start developing, I'll start developing using tools that people were recommending. So it's kind of why I just stick to Firefox more than Chrome. Nothing really wrong with Chrome. It's just what I like to use more. That's all.
Yep. Well, let's go to the biggest headline, I thought, anyway, that Evernote forces password reset for 50 million users. And Mike, you said that you were affected by this.
Oh yeah, actually, I didn't know that they'd done this until I was trying to get into Evernote to get something that's in a hurry for. I'm like, what do you mean my password doesn't work anymore? I tried it. I tried it on my phone. I tried it on my iPad. I tried it on the web browser, and none of them would work. And finally, I went in and just did a reset. And then after I did that, later on, I saw they made everybody reset. So I don't think I did a good job of letting everybody know what was going on. At least I didn't think they did, at least for me necessarily. But you guys use Evernote too, right?
Yeah. I don't use it often enough. I didn't notice about the until I actually got the note from Evernote to change the password. But they have a lot of business customers, a lot of business uses.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't use it that much either. That I didn't notice until Dennis told me about it.
Also interesting that article that we have posted on our show notes. It actually hinted at somebody something about passwords. At the top of the password no list is don't use your email password for any other site, and I think that's pretty important. A pretty easy thing to do.
Actually, that's a very important thing. You should never use the same password for your email as you do for your banks or anything like that, because they get one, they can get in the other ones. You need to keep them separated. That doesn't mean you need to have a separate one for every single site, but I kind of group mine, so but never I have like 4 or 5 that I alternate, and each one means something different, like a different area of what I use things for.
Yeah. And you change them often, right?
I generally change my email password on a higher frequency than I do anything else.
Yeah, I think that in my banking I change pretty regularly as well. Definitely email though, because and even doing it like some of the other shows I do, you'll see my email address in there, and if you see anything I'm doing, I want to make sure it's constantly changing. So that's the other reason.
We've seen this before in other data thefts. So the data that was stolen was encrypted. So Evernote says, well, they've got it, but can the attackers get anything out of it?
Right, and it was salted too. So it was salted before it was put into the MD5. So not very easily broken unless they get the salt. And the fact they made everybody change it was just preventative. And that's better than them not trying to hide it, I think, and then something else being noticed as well. So I think in the long run they did the right thing by putting out the notice that they were, something weird was going on.
Yeah. And if anything, it gets people to change their password.
That's right.
So this next headline. I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
And as I say, that's a habit that you really need to cultivate. If you miss it once or twice, it's easy to fall out of it. And all it takes is just a compromise like this to remind you again that you should be doing it.
Yeah. Good practices, safe practices. Our next headline, fake Mandiant APT report used as malware lure. That's from IC Sense. So even Mandiant puts out this great report. Now they're a victim of a phishing, of a social engineer.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's somebody took advantage of that, saying like, okay, you put this report out, we're going to use that and to get other people to think they're getting the same report or getting something similar to it. So
and it was it falls along the lines of like what Mike and you guys said. It's the hot topic. So it was a hot enough topic that it actually made news and broadcast media. So to expect an attack like this, I think and I think what they were actually trying to do was basically kind of almost thumb their noses back at the security community, because you'll get smaller firms with smaller, IT support that's going to go out there and try to grab it. And they're going to see, who else can they catch sleeping on this. And I think that's what they're trying to do, is just catch some people sleeping and kind of, thumb their noses at them and say, hey, we got you again.
So there's always an element in the hacker community about one-upmanship. Do you think this might have been part of it?
I do. I really think so. I do. Yeah.
So Mandiant's report, the Olympics, Christmas time, the holidays, is nothing safe for social engineering?
No, nothing safe at all. We actually just did an awareness topic for some people we were working for that talked about Google Glasses, the new product Google Glasses. There is a phishing scam out there targeting them, and it's actually a YouTube video, and they kind of copied Google's advertisement and then snuck in their own links, and they're trying to phish data by using the lure of Google Glasses. Then you have the lure of Mandy and ABT. I think these are all just why try to create a lure to catch people when they're there? Just use them.
Yeah, actually,
So they,
I wasn't aware of that one. There's a Google Glass thing going on that says basically it's a hashtag you put in. You said what I would do with Google Glass, and they're giving away like 1,500 more of them. Is that what that's around?
Yeah.
so they're taking advantage of it, and what they're trying to say is that you can become a part of the beta, and you can actually receive the product for free. It's one of those too
Free.
good to be true
Oh,
because Google
free. Okay, yeah, yeah. No, that wasn't what Google was saying. We'll sell you one. It's-
1,500. I think
it-
Google's price is
yeah,
1,500.
it's 1,500, but they had a
Yeah.
limit what they were going to give out, and then they were
Yes.
going to
Yes.
give out 1,500 more of them, but the price is $1,500 as well. So yeah, if they said free, then yeah, that's the catch. Yeah.
It was, and but it was what was really good is the fact that, like I said, you don't have to make up your lures. They're there. They just they grab a hot topic like that, and they actually use Google's video, and they just kind of altered it slightly in the details and the notes of it, but they didn't reshoot a video. They used Google's advertising.
Right. Right.
And I think when you use the word free, I think you're always going to get some
Oh,
buyers
yeah,
there,
yeah.
aren't you? Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those cases where Mandiant's report got hot. So, why do we need to create a campaign when that campaign's being created for us? Let's jump on. They utilized an existing vulnerability that was out there right now around PDF documents, and they took advantage of it because the Mandiant report was so large. It was being distributed by PDF. There was a known issue with PDF in the wild. It was just all about right place, right time. They had an exploit that existed that they could take advantage of. They had a lot of visibility with Mandiant on media, so they put it out there and they caught some people.
Yeah. Most likely they caught security IT people too, because that report was not for the faint of heart. That was an in-depth report.
That definitely was. You wouldn't give it to your parents to read, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So our next headline, security risk of compromised digital certificates. That's from Trend Micro. This one's bad. Whenever a digital certificate goes, that can be a big compromise.
Yeah, and the scary thing is the certificates are supposed to protect you, and here somebody's compromising them. And when they do that, they pretty much can compromise anything the certificate's attached to. So this whole tool we've created to protect ourselves has been compromised at this point.
It's more than that. It's more than the compromise. Once you run the huge risk of while the compromise is running undetected. It's really scary to have a certificate go this undetected, and it's how far reaching it can be felt. But it's actually recovering from something like this, like revoking a certificate, depending on where you utilize a certificate, how you utilize a certificate. When you go to revoke a certificate and replace it, can be equally as detrimental, and it can cost companies a lot of money to recover from something like this.
Yeah, and the problem with this one is the malware was launched into the memory of the infected system, so no infected binary was actually dropped. That's and so basically your signature service is going to be out of the game. Then won't be able to pick that up.
Not only was the memory infected, which is when you get infected memory, it's difficult to clean, but they were able to utilize a Java exploit. So once again, Java pops back up, and that's where third-party patch compliance should really be one of your priorities in your layered security for your environment. If you find the need for Java, and like Mike says, if you don't have the need, disable it. But if you find the need of it, you got to really stay on top of your third-party applications and make sure that they stay compliant also.
So how do we find a malware that's launched to the memory? What have you guys found would be the best tools to locate that? Obviously, Trend Micro did come up with a signature pattern on it, but if it's not a binary, let's hope they can catch it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if it's in memory, and if it's injecting itself into another process, it sometimes is very hard to detect it's even there. So
there's a new one out there that's it's an old technique, but a new technique, which we're seeing a lot of. We're seeing tricks that were used in the past being revisited. Heap spraying is one. And that is a way of injecting into memory and taking advantage of memory. But once they're in memory, pulling memory dumps. But if you don't know, if you haven't baseline what your normal processes are, it makes it difficult for you to pick up a memory injection. Usually, most of the times, you can pick up on that when you pull a memory dump. That it's just extremely large. Most things sitting up in your RAM should not take up a lot of space. There are some cues that you can look for. There are some tools that you can run for memory dumps that can help you pull or help detect a memory infection.
Well, yeah, there's tools you can get memory dumps with, but a real small application can be injected into memory, and you wouldn't. I mean, it'd only be a few hundred bytes that can be doing enough damage. Those are hard to find, very hard to find. Yeah.
Do most behavioral products pick up something that's so small like that in the memory?
Yeah, I would think so. If it's behavioral, you're going to see, especially if it's starting to call out. That's what they look for, is things it's doing that are not normal for application to do. So yeah, I would think that most of them would probably pick that up. But there's, the heuristic stuff, what you're talking about. There's not many of them that I think are really really good. I've only seen a couple out there that are really good and are pretty high end stuff. But your typical home stuff doesn't normally look for that kind of stuff.
Right. Home users are probably the biggest victims, but large corporations that really invest into layer. So if it doesn't have a talk out and the infection is actually there, dropping physical malware files like what's seen here on the compromised digital signatures, that's where HIDs that we talked about last week come into play, where you know what's being written to your computer, you know what your baseline is, you know what your image is, and if you can detect changes to your OS on like a HIDs where you see file changes, those can help detect that you have a change there, but backtracking it to the memory infections are usually really, really, really tough to find.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you said about the layered security. That's the whole idea you do that, is you put things at the edge of your network that, IDS or things like FireEye, things that look at what's going on and can detect when something is in memory that's calling out. So,
I think that's a good intro for this next article by Trend Labs. It says, understanding targeted attacks, how do we defend ourselves? And really, they broke it down to 3 parts. It said, you have to know what your network is doing on a regular basis. You have to really know it, so that way you can pick up any anomalies. And then it also, as you said, Mike, it's got that layered defense. And in fact, what they did was break it down and say, well, you just can't have one layer. You have several layers, and that way you protect yourself within the network itself, in each layer.
Right, and I think the layered approach is very important. But that's what I was trying to say before, is the average home user doesn't have layers in their home. It's just a router to a PC, generally, or a couple PCs.
That's right, and whatever software applications you had defending your own PCs.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of home applications that are actually trying to add that depth to it. They're trying to add like web integrity tools. They're trying to integrate different things other than just a file scanner. It's not just looking for hashes. It's trying to add some network layers to the tool to give people, a little more depth than what we've seen in the past, because of the fact that, we're well beyond that point. That date is come and gone, and now we're trying to play catch up with it. On large enterprises, we've understood this. You can't just do the eggshell approach anymore. You can't make the hardest eggshell in the world and say, okay, try to come crack me. Security.
That goes to a lot of networks you hear are they're crunchy on the outside but soft on the inside, because it's easy to, after you get in, there's like nothing, there's no protection. So the layer is like one layer. So.
And M&Ms, right?
Well, that's right.
Yes,
that's exactly right.
So I mean, you gotta do an approach from the user to the net, right? You gotta, if you're not layering from the user to the net, end to end, you're gonna miss something. And they go, Trend Micro goes to speak to this. They really speak to the fact that you need great depth on your defense.
Yeah, Yeah, and that was what this article kept trying to hone in on, that depth is your best protection. And it's funny, they gave I've seen it before, but they gave the circular defense, but it also included something that your gateways, so your entry points can't line up, so you could have a straight shot into your core. So what it did was lined up its entry points in different areas, so that way you have that protection. It kind of reminded me of a video game I used to play, Star Castles, I think, where you had the defenses and you had to get to that core.
I don't know if I remember that game, but how the try?
You had to put up your defenses, and they would come at you in waves, and then some would fly, and some would be on the ground, and you had
That's right.
You had to layer your defenses and catch them at certain choke points. I remember that game. That was pretty fun.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Trend Labs had another one about mitigating targeted attacks. And here we talk about APTs. This is going to be the hot topic, and I bet you there was a lot of buzz at the RSA conference about this.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing, is APTs aren't new. It's like they're the buzzword all of a sudden, but they're not new. I mean,
yes, it is. Yeah.
So
I think it's APT was the buzzword because it was the great unknown. They knew it was there. Everybody had a theory to it, but I think Mandiant is what really gave it some steam. A lot of these blogs that you're talking about, like the depth of your security, mitigating targeted attacks, social engineering attacks. I think this is all just big fallout from the Mandiant report. So the targeted attack that they talk on was about advanced persistent threat, which was the emphasis to the Mandiant report. But that recently that they had ISACA do a study on advanced persistent threat awareness. So that 63% of security professionals say that they were or could be a target of APT attacks. So there's a lot of security professionals that have done risk assessments on their enterprise, on their network, and they said, you know what, we have reason to be concerned. But what's even most concerning is that they're investing their protection in the wrong areas to help you defend against APT. So as much as they want to say, yeah, we're a target for APT, they're kind of going in the wrong direction. And this report really goes to speak to the study that says that, how good are we as security professionals if we say, hey, I'm a target to it, but then I don't even know how to defend against it. And that, that's a lot.
Well, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, none of those, or even RSA, didn't know how to defend against it properly.
yeah, I guess the question is, they only 60-some% of them thought they were at a risk for it. I think in some ways we're all at a risk for it, right? I mean, granted, not every company has information that's probably valuable to somebody, but ultimately everybody's at risk for it. Because I mean, it depends. Go ahead.
If you refer to that Mandiant report, it said every business you could think of would be at risk.
Yeah, that's what I would think. That's why I didn't understand why it's only 60% of them thought they would be at risk. I mean, what happened to the other ones?
If you look specifically at the Mandiant report, they're looking for things that would be directly related to China. So if your business was in direct competition with China, then you're at a higher risk. Or if your business closely aligned with an economic gain within China, then you're going to be at risk, as opposed to somebody that was a little bit smaller business, or somebody that was doing things like say like one-off ice creams. So somebody that was doing like one-off ice cream flavors or something like that would probably be at a significantly lower risk, as opposed to like Coca-Cola that Mike brought up.
Well, you're saying what, they don't like ice cream over there?
The world loves ice cream.
Yeah, that's right.
Our next article comes from Trend Micro again. Now, I think Trend put out a lot of a lot of interesting articles. I really enjoyed reading them. But it could be, I think, for RSA, lots of fodder for people to talk about. I think they create a lot of buzz.
Yeah.
Same with FireEye. We saw a lot of things from FireEye this week.
Yeah, they've had quite a few announcements this week.
Yeah.
They're going in with other companies to create new tools and a couple other things. That was all announced at RSA as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
how about the timing of Mandiant and the merger with FireEye on different products? How about the timing of that? You had RSA, you had the Mandiant report, and now FireEye is.
Oh, that was all planned, I'm sure. I mean, that's how
Yeah.
you get the buzz, pre-show buzz. So that's why you heard all the noise before the show, as far as all the news goes and everything, and then during the show, the announcements. That's just the way they get everybody talking about them.
it's the bandwagon effect.
The bandwagon,
Mandy Mandy got a lot of bandwagon jumpers, and everybody now are just really trying to put these relationships together. I mean, even Trend's doing it, Semantic's doing it, FireEye's doing it. I think it's the Mandy bandwagon is what we're seeing.
Yeah. Also, I have a feeling that report was kind of held back to be released when it was. I mean, it could have been ready a couple weeks before, or it was destined to be done by the RSA. That's be
For the RSA,
promotional tool.
Yeah, and as we talked before, it's all about searchability, tagging, and if you want to be, if you're still looking at Mandiant, then you're gonna come up with a bunch of FireEye articles, and Trend articles and semantic articles.
Right.
I do want to go back to one of our other Trend Lab articles. It's from alarming to familiar: different social engineering techniques. And I thought this was pretty interesting too. They had the old watering hole technique, which John is very familiar with, but also is that they blend in with the victim's normal behavior, and that way they can set off less alarms for it.
There were a lot of things, and like we said, that the Mandy report was a pretty heavy read, but it was very eye opening, and the fact that what they were trying to do was not necessarily craft code to avoid signature detection, but craft code to just blend in with what is normal traffic. Because one of the things that we talk about is whitelisting your network. So one of the things that they're doing on the social engineering techniques is to blend in with what is normal, right down to slang. I mean, they're very aware of slang used within different regions, and when they're doing these social engineering attacks, they're finding people that are familiar with the slang of your area.
Not only the slang of your area, but what about corporate slang? If you go into one corporation, they have all these terms and acronyms, and if you're able to get a couple of those, put them on emails, you might get. People are less likely to think it's a fish.
I can tell you there are a couple of keywords that if you use within my normal day-to-day business, you will really, really, really turn down people's sense of awareness. You just sprinkle in a couple of these keywords, like you said, these corporate specific terms, and you can get people to sit back and be a lot more relaxed, and when they should be actually paying attention.
Yeah, that's one of those things where a little research on the company, if they're doing their job, that definitely helps them get in through the door a little bit quicker.
That's why companies should be aware of what they're putting out in press releases, I imagine.
That's true.
Yeah. Going on to our next article, Ichitaro vulnerability, another zero-day exploit in the wild, and I believe that this one centers mostly in Japan. Is that right?
This is something that Semantic has done a good job reporting, and it's good to see that everybody is just keeping their eye on everything, because just because it's only being reported in Japan doesn't mean that somebody can work on the exploit, fine-tune the exploit to get it to start to bridge the nations. So Semantic says that they've seen this exploit being utilized since around mid-January, even though they want to call it another zero-day exploit. But when they saw this, they saw it specific to Japan, and they actually saw it specific to a Japanese word processor software called Ichitaro. So right now, it has been very regionally contained, but I think the concern is that somebody can invest a little more time in this and see if they can get it to break out beyond Japan.
Yep. Zeltzer had a good article, What to Include in Malware Analysis Report. And I'd really urge you to read this one. If you're putting out reports, it really broke it down. Make sure you have those hashes in there. Make sure you try to address what the IV was, the initial infection vector. But it was a really good read. I really encourage everybody to read that one.
It's actually a good read. It's a good read if you're doing reverse engineering. That's one of the things they teach you in class. But this is actually a really good example of what you want to include in a report you put back.
Yeah, and Mike, you provide a lot of these reports. So, do you have any suggestions or anything to add to that report?
No, actually, it was really good. Like I said, in class they kind of give you an example of what you should return, but this even gave me more when I went through and did the actual practical test. I wish I would have had this because I gave back what I thought I was giving, but I could have given a few more details probably based on the report. So it's a good read if you're in the reverse engineering malware.
Yeah. And you never know. If you're preparing a report, you never know what might be important to someone else who's reading it, or someone who's connecting the dots. I know, Mike, you do a lot of that.
Right.
Say, okay, you get this piece of information, but you might be getting another piece of information as well. You just never know what could be important to a report.
Right. In our environment that we work in, we like to know when callbacks are because we can control where they go and throw them into a FireEye box and a few other things to know who's infected. So those kind of things are important, where some people might not be able to do that. It's not as important to them as to know where do I find it to remove it. So it's all different. Different people need different things.
Yeah. John, what do you think? What's the most important piece of information you could find in a report like that?
Well, the report to me more keeps in mind on sometimes when I get into an analysis, I get tunnel vision. So having a report ready like that keeps me from getting tunnel vision because I'll get locked into something that I feel is more valuable for my team and what we need for a response that I may forget information that I should be proposing to Mike's team and what they need to respond. So reports like that really help me from getting tunnel vision and from locking in too hard as opposed to being able to take that step back and give a good in-depth analysis.
Yeah. Well, our next, I think we talked about this one already, but FireEye had lots of announcements this week. You think FireEye is going to be a big player here with new products?
I think so. The products they have are already great, and they're just adding to it and expanding that. So it looks like what they're doing with this one is trying to get more of the incident management side to it, which they can report back, but they don't really have the tool to track necessarily. They have very basic stuff built into their products to be able to track and assign and stuff like that. So I think that they're trying to expand that now to be more of a full-fledged management system. So that's why I'm getting out of their the guidance software merger, or not merger, but their work together, the partnership.
It seems like they're going more to the behavioral side as well. We've been talking about that all night. It's going to be behavioral.
And that's one of the things where they really excel is their behavior, because they can, put the malware into a VM and explode it and see what it does and track everything that it does and give you a report on that. So that's their strength. I think, and to do that live as people are downloading stuff and to grab it off the stream and explode it, that's pretty amazing actually if you think about it. But then they can do it to email, so they're spreading out they're widening their reach, and now they're trying to widen the management side of it as well.
Yeah, it's
a natural progression of their platform because FireEye is still very young. They have a great product. They're off to a great start, and I think they're just trying to grow on it.
Yeah, it's a pretty impressive product. I love it. It's simple to set up, and it's very powerful. What it does for you and the amount of time it does it is pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, simple to set up. Those are the key words, isn't it?
Yep.
Bit9, this one has been bouncing around for a couple weeks. They continue to believe that the attack against Bit9 was part of a larger campaign against other U.S. organizations. This keeps gaining traction. It started out as a smaller article, but we just can't seem to shake it here. And I believe that it was...
Go ahead, Dennis, go ahead.
But that it was a SQL injection attack, I believe.
Bit9 is, they make their money off of security products, and for the news to come out that they had some of their keys breached, they're basically armchair quarterbacking this. There's information there to be gathered. What they probably did was they came out with their initial statement to release that they did have a compromise. The best thing is to maintain your integrity. You have to maintain your integrity in the security community. And now that they've been given more time, they're going to release more information on what they found, and try to get a full disclosure. A little bit of all of it is to, one, to protect themselves, and two, to share with the security community, because they do state that they believe the scope of the attack remained the landing point from an SQL injection attack. So they go to add to what they believe is the initial infection vector was SQL. They go to speak to that this was possibly a small part of a larger campaign being used to infiltrate select U.S. organizations. So they think that Bit9 was, just one of the pawns in a larger campaign.
Yeah, it's some pretty scary stuff there, I think. Speaking of scary, Punk Spider enumerates web application vulnerabilities. I would think that we would see less of these, actually, but that there are several of these spiders out there that just spider the web, and some of them are they're just looking for web vulnerabilities. Some are just poking and prodding, and part of that it's the first part of a low-level attack. There's going to be more about this, but they don't really think it is to have to see what the vulnerabilities that it's going to come up with first. What's the poor firewalls on the perimeter going to do? What's the best protection for that, Mike?
Firewalls on the perimeter? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this goes back to the whole layered approach. A firewall is okay, but it still doesn't protect you as much as a layered approach would. I mean, firewalls haven't really been improved in I don't know how long. I mean, the firewall is a firewall. It blocks by port. Its full function hasn't really changed in years. I mean, they've added things to it to do threat detection and try to build that into the firewall to make them, threat appliances so they do multiple things. But I don't believe firewall is going to be the answer to this one.
Yeah. Our next one is Symantec Mandiant reports. So everybody's jumping on the Mandiant. This will probably be the last time tonight we'll talk about Mandiant. But John, I know that you read this one and had some thoughts on it.
This one is meant for more like users like us, more for the admins, the upper level IT, their security or system administrators. What Symantec has done is Symantec has taken some of the information off of the document released by Mandiant and just basically turned it into raw data. It's hash sums. It's IP address, it's domains, it's HTTP gets, it's everything that you're going to need to help bolster your defenses to detect if you have a compromise that's being utilized or known or discovered through what they call the Comment Crew or APT1 or the People's Liberation Army of China. And whether you want to use these is up to you, but I think it is it's very usable information, and it would be very worth your time just to look at it. They format it in a way also that if you're going to integrate it, it is within a usable format, and you can integrate it into your devices relatively easily.
Yeah. I know that we went through a lot of that report. What was, for both of you, what was the most interesting thing you took out of the Mandiant report?
Mine was the fact that they actually had somebody's network compromised for over 4 years.
Yeah, that
That
was a little
that
scary actually, because you think within 4 years you would know that you were compromised, or if you
I mean, the technology is especially around our field changes so rapidly that you would have figured somebody would have caught on within 4 years. But the fact that they were able to sit in somebody's network for 4 years is to me is really impressive. Scary, but impressive.
Well,
But I think that
I know some medium-sized companies that would be just as bad that wouldn't even know they were in there. And
Yeah,
actually, if you talk to them, they don't even feel threatened by the stuff that's going on. They just don't.
that's right.
They just don't care. I mean, which is scary. They just don't realize how bad things are getting.
Yeah. For one, they don't think that they have anything that's worth stealing.
Right.
And second of all, they just don't have the resources to constantly look and look at all the information they have. Even if they have the tools in place, who has time to look at all the logs?
Yeah, I know some medium-sized companies don't even have the tools in place. They think a firewall is all they need. And
Yeah.
an antivirus thrown in. They don't think about all the other issues. And I know ones that take credit cards in because they don't store them locally. They think they're safe, but they don't realize that if they're taking the credit card and put it into the system, it's just as a risk as if it's sitting there, at rest, because they have to type it in or scan it in somehow. That means it still
yeah.
passes through their systems. So
Yeah.
I think the other thing that sparks my interest is the amount of effort used on the spear phishing or targeted phishing campaigns. Well beyond what you see on your typical botnet attacks, or where they have actual recorded instances of where users kind of suspected something wasn't quite right, that they actually had people sitting at the other end answering them, telling them, no, it's okay, it's legitimate. That it wasn't an automated response. They had people actually watching these attacks in hopes that somebody would do a reply and then respond with answers convincingly enough to say, hey, really trust us. You really need to download this. This is not something fake. So that's a lot of man hours, invested man hours for just to hook that one device.
Yeah, but it only took one. I guess that's the takeaway. They only needed to get to one, and then they could expand out from there.
Yeah, and they would talk about that once they got one, and they got in, that they would quickly look to move laterally, that they would try to expand their grasp from there.
Yep. And phishing goes mobile. This is the another article from Trend Micro. And there was a lot of interesting stats in here. 75% of the mobile phishing URLs were rogue versions of well-known banking and financial sites. So they're looking for login credentials.
Yeah, I don't think this is as new as what I read. This, I think it's like something new. I think we've had this longer. I think it's becoming more prominent. But I think that they've been talking about mobile stuff, mobile advertising, all this other stuff for 2 years now at least. And I think it's all came with it. I just think now it's growing to the point where it's actually becoming a more serious issue at this point.
Well, I can tell you there was a time where, smartphones were the gadgets. It was if you, one, were either an IT professional and you wanted to show your geekiness, or two, if you had the money and you wanted to show everybody that you had the money. But that mobile devices are becoming, as common as PCs. Back in the days, PCs weren't that common, and now you can find at least two in almost every home, I think. And what's interesting is Mike says is it's not anything new so much as it's growing. Trend Micro goes on to explain that in 2012 they found over 4,000 phishing URLs designated specifically for mobile devices.
Right, which and ultimately 4,000 isn't really that much, but I think it's a lot for mobile, and I think it's that's just a start. I think it's getting ready to explode. Because like you said, everybody has a phone now that's more than likely smart in some way. They can get on the web because so many of them, I don't know anybody I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that actually has a phone that you flip open anymore. So they almost all have a web browser of some kind of smart. Even a feature phone has a web browser on it. It might not be
Yeah.
as at risk as something like an Android that runs Java, but for phishing, it doesn't matter because they're just going to ask you for information and you're going to give it to them. So
I think Dennis has the oldest phone I've seen so far.
Are we picking on BlackBerry again? I already admitted that I use Windows IE. Are we picking on my BlackBerry?
So
I also had
just
that
for the
reference
last,
for an ancient video game too, so I'm not doing too well tonight, am I?
well, old games are coming back there, Dennis. I mean, you can
Yeah, I
buy
know.
all the old games now in console form, and it comes with like 20 of them or whatever, and you can play all
it's
your old
like
games.
malware too. What's old is new in malware too.
Yep.
And to wrap on this last comment on phishing goes mobile, I think is everybody likes to do their surveys and they like to do their studies on what's going on out there and what the opinion of the general public is. And there was one statement in the entire article that just just flashed red lights to me, and it was. The issue is that users' attitudes towards mobile devices are that users easily dismiss these devices as simple devices and not a major security implication to their data.
And
They don't think that
that's scary to
phones
me
are.
because the phones these days are more powerful than the computer I learned on. So by far
Yeah.
more powerful. Just in the last 20 years, the phones we have are more powerful than what you would buy as a new home computer. Much more powerful. So it's just so attached to them and with them every day, and it's just part of their life, and they just kind of get used to that and to forget that it's really a powerful computer in their pocket.
Yeah. Well, our next article was another big one, and you're gonna have to explain this headline to me. Microsoft admits it was also hit by hackers. That I understand. Malware infects their Mac business unit. How big is this Mac business unit at Microsoft?
It's actually bigger. It's pretty good size. It's Office. It's their main thing is their Office suite.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if the Macs had the advantage of people aren't really have been attacking it, but I think it's becoming more popular. It's going to start becoming a victim as well. So there's always been that rumor that you can't get infected with a Mac, which you can. Obviously, you can.
Yeah.
It's just that they weren't the target, so you were less likely to get infected, but you can still get infected. In fact, these recent Java exploits affected Macs as well as it did PC, so it wasn't necessarily limited to a PC for that. In fact, it would infect Linux as well. They were equal opportunity infectors.
And Mike is right on that. So the small number of computers admitted by Microsoft were to include their Mac business units. They were basically attacked in a similar fashion as those that the Facebook and Apple technical people were, in the sense that it was a exploitation of a Java browser plugin vulnerability. So, and we spoke to that earlier, that Java has the ability to cross platforms.
Yeah, and I have a theory with this too because the rumor is they're coming out with Microsoft Office for iPad and iPhone, or for iPad at least. I don't know about iPhone.
Oh.
So I'm wondering if that same business unit is the one who's doing that, and they were on that very same site that infected Twitter and Facebook, and that's how they got it. That's kind of my theory because I know I've been hearing rumors they're coming out with an iPad version of their Office suite. So
That makes sense.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that article did say it was the same type of Facebook and Apple attack. So
It could have been the same site. I mean, it could be.
Yeah. This that headline reminds me of the old days when Microsoft, you could actually see on their websites, then you could see what kind of device was or what kind of server you were using. And for years they used a Linux server to power their own website, Microsoft.com.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of funny.
They changed all that. They got rid of that. They took a lot of heat from that.
Yeah, if they did it now, they get a lot more heat because they have their own cloud service that's for hosting. So if they weren't hosting on their own service, they would really get some heat for that. But no, I did not know that. That's actually kind of interesting.
Another article by Trend Micro. They were very busy the last couple of weeks. It's Watering Hole. John, I think this is your specialty, isn't it?
Yeah, I for all the wrong reasons. And they go into
Did we
why
lose you, John?
watering hole. Can you hear me?
Oh, I think we lost him. You go keep talking, John. I'll get him back.
Okay. You can hear me, Mike?
I hear you just fine, yeah.
Yeah. So it comes on the tails of the attack that Microsoft admits to being used. So watering hole was one of the techniques that was used to leverage the Java browser plugin vulnerability. In the sense that watering holes have been around for a while. So what people don't understand is that watering holes have been seen as early as 2009. They're not new. They have been around for a while. But with the resurgence of all the vulnerabilities that we're seeing online, it's a technique that becomes viable. So now that we have several vulnerabilities in the wild that can be leveraged, why not resurface an attack that can be easily used? So watering holes are effective because essentially you need three things. You don't need a lure to bait people in with. You don't have to come up with some kind of fancy subject line, you want $1 million or come get your free Google glasses. Basically what you need is you need to identify a site with a security hole. And then you compromise the site. Once you compromise a site, then you need to have a vulnerability in the wild that's exploitable. And in our case, there were several PDF and Java vulnerabilities that were available in the wild that could be leveraged. And then the third thing you need is you just need to develop malware that uses or exploits the vulnerability. So the three things that you really need is a compromised site, a vulnerability that you can leverage, and malware that you can plant within the site.
Right, and we gotta say this is how the LA Times was hit as well, because they they were infected and I don't know how long they didn't know it, because almost a month and a half, and they were using the same type of techniques where it's a watering hole. Everybody was going to this page to get something, news in this case, and somebody exploited the site with something they can install.
Yeah, and they caught the developers at Facebook this way, at Microsoft, at Apple. So, what's old is new. It's worked in the past. We just have a lot of vulnerabilities out there right now, and it's easy just to have people come to you.
That's right. And I think we have Dennis back now.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, okay.
There's Dennis.
It's a little different tonight, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little different. Testing technology.
Yeah. Well, the last article I think we'd like to go over is Wired. I always like to get the Wired articles. I wish we had more of them, but sometimes they just don't fit in the security model. But they talked about the Twitter, the Tumblr, the Pinterest exploits. We see a lot of the Twitter accounts being attacked. What kind of information can we get from these?
From the Twitter accounts themselves, you're talking about? So. Yeah. I mean, they have your email. They have some bio information, which you shouldn't be putting too much information in your bio, about yourself. But I think a lot of times what they're trying to do is trying to get to your list and trying to send you your list. People think it's you, and they typically trust the link if somebody that follows you, So they're trying to find the people that have big lists, especially. You get somebody. But Justin Bieber, what's he, 25 million followers or something like that? They could break into that account. They'd probably love it because, all of his little kitty fans are going to want to click on whatever he sends them. So I think that's what they're trying to do for mainly. But it also gives them email addresses to do phishing as well. So there's a bunch of information like that. But again, there's not much personal information there, with the exception of maybe John mentioned earlier about keeping different email passwords and other account passwords. You can get your password from there maybe, but
one of the things I think what it does is, we all know about spoofing headers. You can spoof a header, but within the IT security realm, we can pick up on those pretty quickly. But if you're able to get into things like Twitter, Tumblr, Pinterest. It's the wolves in sheep's clothing. I think it's easier to hide yourself and try to trick people into thinking that if I get Mike's Twitter account, they're gonna go, well, hey, Mike sent something to me. This is a little more safe. Let me click it.
Yeah, at least you hope it was safe. Somebody you trust, you think it would be it'd be safe. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So and there are, and I can tell you that I would fall victim to something like that. There are some people that I know are a little more security savvy that I tend to let my guard down with them, and I'm just as fallible as anybody else. That I'll see that from somebody that I know that I work in the security field, that I would hope they were doing the right thing, and I make those assumptions, so I can fall into those traps pretty easily also.
So I just had something like this happen to me. On Facebook, somebody sent out something, and it wasn't necessarily from me, but I was somehow involved in it, and my name was on the graphic they sent out, saying that these 5 people just recommended this or just did this, or I can't remember what it was. And I think it was like an iPad test thing. I don't know, you guys follow me on Facebook, I don't know if you saw it. But then as soon as I saw it go out and I realized my name was on there, that I didn't put my name on there, I immediately comment at the bottom, "This is a scam, do not do it," and it came from me, so they would know that, my name may be on there, but I did not do that. So
I try to do the same thing, and I do a little bit of Facebook lurking. I like to watch what my friends are doing as opposed to comment. And then, when I catch them get sucked into one of those reposts, I will basically pick one person, hit one person, and then just, start the circulation of, hey, you just got scammed. And then let it grow from there.
I have some friends that do those reposting things a lot. And the last week security one or 2 weeks ago was about Facebook settings. And when I was researching that, I did not realize they've added the ability to basically not necessarily ignore people, but like don't get app requests from certain people. Because I had some people that were like every day where I couldn't get to play this game with me type thing. And I just don't do that. So, but they now allow you to either buy the app or buy the person, ignore app request. Because for a while I was just ignoring the people in general because they kept sending it to me. And I didn't necessarily want to ignore their post, but I was getting tired of the app request. So that's something I don't know how long it was put in there, but when I was researching the Facebook stuff, that's why I found that's kind of interesting.
There's a bunch of those that are little advertised older settings that you can do for Facebook. There's another one like that if you know somebody who has passed on and has a Facebook account, that could be compromised. Nobody's using that account, and somebody could eventually brute force the password to get in and represent that person. But you can actually request Facebook if you know somebody. You can have a request, and you have to provide some documentation. And what they'll do is they'll put a memory wall up, but they'll make the account no longer active.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's kind of interesting. I mean, I saw a report of concern link. Is that how you do that in Facebook?
I'm not sure. I have the article. I'll send that out in the show notes.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to. I mean, not that we deal with that kind of stuff every day, but it's one of those things where it'd be nice to know if something like that happened. You could at least help somebody else out through that. Because I mean, I'm sure that happens to families all the time. Grandparents or whatever, pass.
Well, I think the one of the awkward scenarios that they presented says, a lot of people put their birthdays. Well, when the birthday comes to somebody who's passed on, you get the birthday wish, the thing, that's one of the things that they want to avoid, and Facebook is totally in agreement. They don't want to put anybody that bring up bad memories or anything like that. They'd rather, do a tribute thing instead. I thought that was a pretty feature. Yep.
Smart.
Well, you can get Security Decoded delivered automatically to your favorite device by subscribing to our netcast at your favorite podcast directly, like iTunes. Also, subscribe to your YouTube channel to get regular updates as well. If you listen to Stitcher Radio, subscribe to get Security Decoded automatically every week. We also have a Twitter account that you can follow to get the latest news and information. You can find all of these details by going to Security Decoded TV. If you have TiVo, you can watch us by getting a season pass to Security Decoded. More ways to watch and listen are on the way too. So usually we end this with a couple of things that are in the news, and I have a couple. One of them is that we have the snow, and what comes after all the snow season is spring and spring cleaning. So I wanted to hit you guys up. What's your security spring cleaning function that you guys like? And I also have another one. I read an article about the odd things that people steal. And it was an interesting article. But two of the top things were Tide detergent and razor blades. Then pet food was another one. Just these odd things that you wouldn't think about. The other thing I want to throw out there to you guys is, what do you think the piece of information that you have that can be stolen that you wouldn't think about? We know about taxes, and one thing I have on my computer is a list of people's birthdays, and that could be valuable to somebody, and things like that. So what do you guys think? Either the spring cleaning or what you think might be valuable that people wouldn't think to kind of data that you could steal?
Mike, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Well, spring cleaning, as far as security stuff goes, I mean, every year, and I do this in January, I don't do it necessarily in spring, is I take last year's documents and I typically compress them into a zip file with a password, just so they're not sitting around in the open. I put them on a thumb drive, and I actually stored a thumb drive, and you ever seen one of those puzzle boxes where it's like 11 steps to get it open? I just sit on my desk. It's a novelty item, but I stick that in there once a year and clean up my documents. I do leave them on my computer as well in the zip file because I need to go back to get them. But they are password protected, so if something they got on my machine and they couldn't go back to my old documents, which could include taxes or scanned forms like the house we just bought, things like that. So that's my spring cleaning. I do that every January. I do it with email too. Same thing in email. That's a good idea. As far as things to steal, you mentioned about addresses and birth dates. And I actually have a lot of that on my machine in the form of family tree documents and things like that.
Oh. Yeah.
And it has social security numbers in it and things like that. Because some of them are deceased, obviously. But as going through the research, you get that social security information from them. But I do have birthdays and addresses of aunts and uncles. And I never really thought about that so much, because that could be valuable to somebody. If you have your name and address and a phone number, that's a lot of information for somebody to get credit with. So.
Not only that, one of the standard password challenge questions is, what's your father's middle name? What's
your mother's maiden name?
Yeah. You grew up in? Yeah.
Yeah, I never even thought about that.
That could be valuable.
Yeah.
Yep. John, what do you think?
And my thing about stealing information really aligns with Mike and what you said, and it's genealogy data. There's a lot of applications out there about getting to know your family tree and how much of that data people, they forget how important that is. And it is a lot of security questions. And what people don't realize is a lot of that also are passwords. Even though it's not recommended, someone's password is probably their firstborn child's birthday.
Yeah.
Or their 3 kids' names. You're keeping your family. You know what I mean? Keeping your personal life, your personal business, I think is very important. And in the Facebook age, I think people forget about that. So those are things that you can find out just by going, well, how do you know this person? Are they family? And, through your friends list, you can start to map this person's family by who's marked as family, who's marked as acquaintance or close friends. It's I think it was a fad. Everybody jumped on board with it and they thought it was neat without thinking how far-reaching the consequences are going to be now. I put this data out there now. It's searchable now. It gets a little hard to start protecting that. So you got to kind of keep family at home. Keep your private stuff at home. And as far as spring cleaning, Dennis, you just saw what I did the other week for us. I like Mike. I tend not to necessarily do it around January, but 2012 is for 2012. I'll start to do some cleanups to separate the years, to compress some pictures, and to make sure that my historical data, like pictures from 2012, emails from 2012, documents 2012, I compress them down, password protect them, and store them on an external device, and then I start fresh with 2013 and start to build my data for 2013.
Well, great. That wraps up our show. For show notes from the show, you can contact details and more. Go to Security Decoded TV website, where you can get show notes and watch all the other episodes of Security Decoded. I believe we referenced Security 101 a couple times tonight, and I bet you we have a couple of topics come out of this show that we thought about. While there, check out the other great shows at Tech Zen TV, and we'd love to hear from you, and you can contact us via Twitter or email. And next time, hopefully we won't have any snow. We'll all be in a studio, and we'll see you next time.
Good night.
Night. For show notes for this show, contacts, and more, go to the techzen.tv website where you can get show notes for all of our shows. We love to hear from our viewers and listeners. We have an email, a Twitter, and a phone number where you can contact us for each show. For details, visit the techzen.tv website and get the show details. You can also make a video and upload it somewhere like YouTube or Vimeo and then just send us a link. You never know, you may see your video in a future show. You can get all of our shows delivered automatically to your favorite device by going to your favorite podcast website like iTunes and subscribing. Each of our shows also has a YouTube channel you can subscribe to get regular updates. Our shows are also available on most internet radio networks like Stitcher and TuneIn Radio. You can also watch and listen to our shows on Xbox, TiVo, and Roku. You can even find us on your Zune.